Today I'm here with Ricky Boyer. Ricky is a leader in data analytics at Textron Aviation. He leads the machine learning courses in our Masters of Data Science program here at Newman, and he brings just a special passion for this work. Ricky, thanks for joining us. And start out by telling us a little bit about what you do at Textron and how you got into data.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Like you said, I'm the leader of the data analytics department of Textron Aviation's aftermarket group. So, what I, my main role is distributing parts and programs and warranties across our global fleet and all the logistics and fund finances and data analytics that go into that. I have, like you said, I have a real passion for data analytics. It started a long time ago when actually I was in my senior year of college. I had a great guest speaker come to one of my marketing courses. I think you're familiar with him, Dr. Chakraborty, at OSU. But he really sparked my basically my passion for this entire uh, I guess field of study. And I guess what I hope to do being part of this course and being part of your program is hopefully do that for some students that I come across, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and you've been doing it already, to be honest. So um, that's, it's always fun to hear how people get started into it. So tell us a little bit about how your role has developed at Textron Aviation over time. Where did it start from and how has it taken shape over time?
Yeah, so I have a really interesting role in that it's actually one of the more kind of senior leaders of data at the company. If you know Jacob Lynn, then who's also teaches in this program, he actually created the position that I now sit in, and it developed under his leadership for a period of time. And then about 3 years ago, I took it over and have developed it further. I remember back in the days when it was just kind of me and him and a couple of other people scrounging data together, trying to find the best tools that we could use, and just kind of trying to make the business work as best as we could with the very little resources that we had at the time. But we've grown so much since then. We have a plethora of tools. We have an entire fully developed IT and analytics roadmap and strategy that we're implementing at Textron Aviation for not just my group, but also across all of the data teams that exist at Textron. And it's been a really fun ride. But it truly has developed quite a bit, and that's why getting hooked up with courses like this and programs, especially with our local schools, is tremendously important because that talent doesn't grow itself. And so, unless we take the effort to invest in people and invest in that particular kind of talent, then teams like mine couldn't exist.
Absolutely. So several of my former students have had the good fortune of coming over to work there, and I want to thank you again for creating such a great work environment. It's been exciting to see your growth and also help feed the growth.
Yeah.
So, and of course, you're one of the favorites among the managers over there, along with Jacob and others. Lots of great folks. So, it's really cool to hear, right, those early days and how it's developed over time. When you and I started talking about this curriculum and I was getting, employer feedback and making sure that we were meeting the expectations that employers would hold, um, we talked about machine learning and its importance, but this is part of a larger curriculum. Could you talk a little bit about this, process of moving from kind of the early stages of data analytics into kind of getting good at data reporting and giving insight into what's been happening, right?
Yeah.
And then that transition, because I just talked with Jacob a while back, and he's talking about data storytelling and the importance of really bringing insight into that historical data. But if you could talk a little bit about kind of how we build in our complexity in our data teams to then when it becomes, at what point does it become relevant to start thinking about machine learning as that process develops?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so in my experience, that type of activity actually comes from the business. And kind of as you already alluded to, it's a function of what questions are we being asked,
Mhm.
right? So it, instead, what I find is that instead of people asking like what happened, um, they ask the key distinction of what will happen or what's more likely to happen. That's really the point in my head when I start hearing people ask that type of question, then I'm going, okay, so we're moving from descriptive analytics and storytelling and describing the things that have already occurred historically. And now we're moving into a realm of what can be, what is likely to happen, what's likely to exist, what are we likely to see in the market. And that's really where machine learning comes in, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
And what are some of the things required to be able to develop, conceptualize, have the resources for, or the data for a predictive project?
Yeah, so I mean, what I find is you really do have to have the historical stuff kind of figured out. If you can't do descriptive analytics on something, you're not going to be able to do machine learning on it, right? And so everything that exists from the descriptive standpoint, you would also need to have in place for the machine learning. Now, we also have a few additional requirements for machine learning that would be like dealing more with like the sample of the data itself, right? So we want to make sure that it's balanced. We want to make sure that it's there isn't a huge bias toward any particular kind of subset of the data. We also want to look for things that are missing, right? Is something missing because we just haven't collected that particular type of data before? But that could also skew. For instance, if we're only looking within certain zip codes or we're only looking at certain types of customers, maybe the use case calls for that. But if it doesn't, then we might be accidentally through kind of our data filtering and or just our data capture in general, we could be leaving out huge markets that we don't even have visibility to, but could be tapped if we were able to incorporate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So, what's one of your favorite things about data work? What is it that really worth it for you?
I love the puzzle. I used to do Sudoku puzzle games. I I actually for a really long time loved like Bejeweled and how quickly can I do Bejeweled. I was raised in a video game and board game family where we kind of played those and competed with each other in those types of things. And so I love figuring out the puzzle. And the way that you know that that's my passion is because there's actually data in machine learning problems that have solved monopoly. And so I love figuring that type of thing out and really being able to then apply it, right?
Yeah,
In some kind of game or in the business world, which is more frequently where I operate now. But for me, it's the puzzle. Every day it's something different. Every day it's something new. And every day it's something that is challenging. Some people, kind of want to coast or kind of are good with you know, just normal business. But I think that we're at the state of the world and the state of education where we can be better than that if we want to be. And so applying the best and brightest or the newest and greatest to my business puzzle is really what I enjoy every day.
Great. So I'd be interested in your perspective on the outlook for roles in data analytics and data science. We're in the age of AI now, and it's developing so rapidly that it's hard to tell exactly what's going to happen next. Some of the work in technology, such as writing code, obviously is becoming something that AI can do very well, and so it's if you were a person who wrote code for a living, right, and that's
Mhm.
pretty much all you did, right? That's not a good place to be right now.
No.
So you have to be able to at least add some kind of additional skill or knowledge to that. What's your opinion of that, like for data analysts and data scientists?
Yeah. So I would agree. If all you're doing is no, regardless of role. So I'll start broadly, and then I'll kind of come back to the data analytics piece.
Mhm.
For all roles, if you're doing anything that can be done by a machine, you should assume that you're not going to be doing that for very long.
Mhm.
That does include coding now, which is crazy, but it does make sense. As the technology developed, a really good use case that we can test pretty easily is the people creating the AI know how to code, and they can pretty easily test whether or not the code that the AI writes is accurate or not. Um, and so uh, that should have been expected. Um, but regardless, no matter what kind of role you're in, if you're doing something that a machine can do, then I would, in my experience, I would assume that I'm not going to be doing that for very long because of AI, because of machine learning. Those things can take the most likely output and do that anyway, right? So anything that's just rote memorization or repetitive or monotonous, it's going to be that way uh, basically for the rest of time, right? The cat
Right.
is out of the bag.
Yep.
Um, so for analysts, though, and for data scientists, really, while the machine learning and the creating models and decoding are all tools that we use frequently, they're not really the value that we add to the business or to whatever project we're working on. Um, the value that we add is knowing, hey, this particular thing is biased. I need to account for that bias.
Mhm.
Or hey, that type of coding or that particular process doesn't match or align with the reality of our business. And so I need to adjust my process or adjust my code to now account for that new process. So it's more a translation or a providing the computers with the context that
Mhm.
they're operating in that is really the value of an analyst or a scientist. And so, as I think, I don't see the roles going away. I see them evolving to being those translators more and more over time. But
Yeah.
yeah, who's to say? It certainly is changing every day.
Yeah. So it's you said the context, the question, right? The questions that come from understanding the peculiarities, right, of the field
Mhm.
you're in, um, and then kind of double checking the
Mhm.
results that we're getting and be able to think critically at a higher level, right?
Yeah.
So it strikes me, it's my opinion that it's really, really difficult to replace. Um, a, a data analyst because they're sitting at the junction between the people and the processes and the data, right? And
Mhm.
because they're like really kind of like the interface, the point of contact, the liaison, right, between these things, between the real world and what, you know, AI can do, right?
Mhm.
It's going to be really hard to replace that linkage. Same for data scientists, in my opinion. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that it's the value that we provide is all in the context,
Mm-hmm.
and all in the translation between the computer and the business. So one way in requirements gathering and the other in describing what the computer is actually saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, but absolutely, I don't see that going away anytime soon. It could change over time in that the ways in which we have to do that differ. The depending on how things continue with quantum computing, which there have been recent developments in, and how things continue to progress with AI, then absolutely those will change over the next decade, 2 decades, and they'll change ever more quickly. But ultimately, somebody's always going to have to tell us what's going on, right? And certainly AI isn't at that level yet. And I, based on the way that I see people write requirements for dashboards and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you don't know how to write those requirements or don't have a guide through creating those requirements, then you're not really going to get the thing that you want anyway. And that's what data analysts and data scientists do. It's the unsung part of the job and arguably the hardest part to teach, but it's there and it's what you're doing day in, day out.
Absolutely. All right, so now let's think about the person who's thinking about possibly signing up for a program like ours and maybe entering the field of data science. What bits of advice or 2 cents would you have to offer them?
I would say try and get applied experience. There's a reason why our courses walk through projects.
Mhm.
And there's a reason why we titled it Applied Machine Learning rather than just machine learning. We're really focusing and honing in on the application, not just the theoretical. And when I'm a hiring manager looking at a bunch of different candidates, I want to know that they're going to be able to apply the things that they've learned. And so I would say our program is really set up well for that. Intentionally so. We spent a lot of time making sure that it was, but
Sure.
that's where the bread and butter is. And so whenever you can lean into that, it's going to set your resume apart from the next person.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last question for today. What would you say to somebody who's maybe a little bit scared of the notion of machine learning? There are some complex concepts, right, in
Mhm.
there. There's a lot to learn. What would you say to somebody who's just like not sure if it's gonna fit them or if it's worth all the effort?
Yeah. Well, I used to be one of those people. I had a marketing degree coming in. I mean, I had very high like math scores and things like that coming out of high school. But in college, because I had that, I didn't really spend a bunch of time taking math courses and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And so to be thrown back into kind of graduate level math was it was a lot, and it was frightening up front. But it's not really that bad, and we certainly try and make it easy. And again, I think we focus on the application. And so while certainly we go over the theory, um, a lot of it is just okay when you're looking at this type of chart, like a confusion matrix, or when you're looking at the results from a regression model, right? Here's
Mhm.
the particular things you should be looking for, and here's why. The concepts become much more consumable because we break it up that way.
Mhm.
Additionally, I think we test kind of the application, and I know at least in one of our courses, um, I'm perfectly fine with you searching the internet. In fact, I may not give you the answer directly, but I give you 2 weeks to figure out the answer. And I know that there's a heck of a lot of YouTube videos out there that'll help you out.
Right.
And so, what I'd say is, as long as you're willing to put in a little bit of effort, I think you're going to be rewarded for that effort pretty heavily. And there's not really much to be scared because we've structured it in a way that it's manageable and consumable.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, that's great. That's so helpful, Ricky. There's more to be said, but we'll get back and say more in a later conversation. But thanks for joining me for this conversation today.